Everyone thought Dylan was the perfect son-in-law. Even I did, until I found the second phone hidden in my daughter's laundry room. What was on it changed everything I thought I knew about my family. But before I tell you about that phone, let me back up 6 months. Because the thing about family betrayal is, it never starts where you think it does. My name is Robert Henderson. I'm 62 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect little family. My daughter Emily married Dylan Martinez 2 years back. And honestly, I couldn't have been happier for her. Dylan seemed like everything a father wants in a son-in-law. He was polite, well-dressed, had a good job in marketing. More importantly, he made my Emily laugh. After losing her mother Margaret to cancer 3 years ago, hearing Emily laugh again, well, that meant everything to me. I live alone now in the house Margaret and I bought when Emily was just 5 years old. It's a big place, maybe too big for one person, but it holds 40 years of memories. Every creaky floorboard, every family photo on the mantel, every corner of that house tells a story. Dylan would come by regularly, especially after Emily and I had one of our little disagreements. You know how it is with fathers and daughters. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye. But Dylan? He always knew exactly what to say to smooth things over. "Mr. Henderson," he'd say in that smooth voice of his, "Emily just wants to make sure you're taking care of yourself. We both do. You're family now." Family. That word used to make me feel warm inside. Dylan had this way about him. When he walked into a room, he commanded attention without being loud about it. Tall, confident, always impeccably dressed. Margaret would have loved him. She always appreciated a man who knew how to present himself properly. "Dad, isn't Dylan wonderful?" Emily would gush whenever they'd visit. "He's been helping me organize our finances, planning for our future. He's so responsible." And he was. At least that's what I thought. Dylan would ask thoughtful questions about my work as an engineer, about the house, about my retirement plans. He seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our family legacy. "You've built quite a life here, Mr. Henderson," he told me one Sunday afternoon as we sat on the front porch. "This house, your career, the way you raised Emily, it's impressive, really impressive." I remember feeling proud that day, proud that my daughter had found someone who appreciated not just her, but everything our family represented. The way he looked around our home, taking in every detail, asking about the history of certain pieces of furniture, the stories behind the photographs. It felt like genuine interest, like he truly wanted to be part of our family history. But then little things started bothering me. Nothing major, just inconsistencies. Like how Dylan always seemed particularly interested when I mentioned my home office. His eyes would light up whenever I talked about the built-in safe where I kept important documents, or how he'd volunteer to help Emily with laundry, which struck me as odd since he'd never shown interest in household chores before. "Dylan's been so helpful lately," Emily mentioned during one of our weekly phone calls. "He's even doing laundry now, says he wants to take more responsibility around the house." That should have made me happy. A man who helps with chores is a keeper, right? But something about it nagged at me. Maybe it was the way his questions about my daily routine had become more frequent, more specific. One evening, Emily called me in tears. She and Dylan had their first real fight. "Dad, Dylan's been acting strange lately," she sobbed over the phone. "He keeps asking about your savings, about whether you have everything properly documented. He says he's worried about your future, but something feels off." Her voice cracked as she continued. "He asked me if I knew your passwords, if I had access to your accounts. When I asked why, he said it was just in case something happened to you. But Dad, you're only 62. You're in perfect health. Why would he be thinking about something happening to you?" That conversation planted the first seed of doubt in my mind, but I pushed it away. After all, financial planning is responsible, right? Maybe Dylan was just looking out for all of us. Maybe I was being paranoid, seeing threats where there weren't any. 3 weeks later, I found the phone. I was at Emily and Dylan's place, helping fix their washing machine while they were both at work. Emily had given me the spare key months ago. "For emergencies, Dad." I'd used it maybe twice before. The washing machine was making that grinding noise that usually meant the bearings were shot, and I figured I could save them a couple $100 on a repair call. The phone was tucked behind the detergent bottles, wrapped in a plastic bag. At first I thought maybe it was just an old phone Emily had forgotten about, but something made me turn it on. The screen lit up immediately. The battery was nearly full. Recent messages. Active use. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the messages. Most of them seemed innocent enough. Love messages between Dylan and Emily. Sweet romantic stuff that made me feel a little guilty for snooping. But then I saw the other messages. The ones that made my blood run cold. Messages about the old man's schedule. about when the daughter's away, about how much do you think he's really worth. I sat there in that laundry room for what felt like hours, staring at that phone, my perfect son-in-law, the man who called me family, who made my daughter laugh, who seemed so concerned about my well-being. He was planning something, something that involved me being alone, something that involved my money. But here's the thing that really got to me. In some of those messages, Dylan was defending me, telling someone on the other end that I wasn't incompetent, that I was sharp for my age, that whatever they were planning wouldn't be as easy as they thought. So who was Dylan really? The caring son-in-law who defended me? Or the man planning to take advantage of me? I put that phone back exactly where I found it, fixed the washing machine, drove home in complete silence. As I pulled into my driveway that evening, looking up at the house that held everything I'd worked for my entire life, I realized something terrifying. I had no idea who I could trust anymore. But that phone held more than love messages and cryptic planning notes. It held secrets that would turn everything I thought I knew about my family completely upside down. I spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about that phone. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see those messages about my schedule, about when Emily would be away. But the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. Because here's what didn't make sense. If Dylan was planning to rob me, why was he defending me in those same messages? On Thursday morning, my doorbell rang at 8:30 sharp. Dylan stood on my front porch, holding 2 cups of coffee, and wearing that concerned expression that had fooled me for 2 years. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson. I brought you your usual black, no sugar. I was hoping we could talk." I let him in, my heart pounding. Was this it? Was this when he'd make his move? But Dylan didn't head toward my office. Instead, he sat down at my kitchen table and pulled out his phone. Not the hidden phone, his regular one. "Mr. Henderson, I need to show you something, and I hope you won't be angry with me." His voice was gentle, almost apologetic. "I've been documenting some concerning incidents over the past few months." He turned his phone toward me, and what I saw made my stomach drop. It was a video of me, taken from my own kitchen window. In the video, I was standing in my garden, having what appeared to be an animated conversation with no one. "When did you take this?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Last Tuesday, around 3 in the afternoon. You were out there for almost 20 minutes, talking to someone who wasn't there." Dylan's expression was filled with what looked like genuine worry. "Mr. Henderson, Emily's been concerned about you since Mrs. Henderson passed. We both have." He swiped to another video. "This one showed me putting groceries in my refrigerator, then taking the same items out and putting them back in again, over and over. I installed a few security cameras around your property." Dylan continued. "Not to spy on you, but to monitor your well-being. Emily asked me to, actually. She's been worried about leaving you alone for her business trips." My mind was reeling. "You've been watching me? For your safety, Mr. Henderson. Look, I know this might seem invasive, but we care about you. Emily's been losing sleep over this." Dylan leaned forward, his voice dropping to that concerned tone I'd grown used to. "She's noticed you repeating stories, forgetting conversations we've had. Last week you called her 3 times in one day asking about the same doctor's appointment." "I did not," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't entirely sure. Dylan pulled up his call log. "Here are the times you called Emily last Wednesday. 9:15 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 4:45 p.m., each time asking about your cardiology appointment, which had already been canceled the week before." I stared at the phone screen, trying to remember. Had I really called 3 times? The days since Margaret's death sometimes blended together, but surely I would remember something like that. "Mr. Henderson," Dylan said softly, "I think you might benefit from talking to someone, a professional. There are excellent programs for people who are experiencing changes as they age." Changes? The word came out harsher than I intended. Memory issues, confusion. It's nothing to be ashamed of. My grandfather went through something similar. Dylan reached across the table and touched my hand. "The important thing is getting help early, before anything dangerous happens." That's when he showed me the final video. Me, standing in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, fully dressed, car keys in my hand, looking completely lost. "You were about to drive somewhere at 2 a.m., Mr. Henderson. When I knocked on the door to check on you, you seemed surprised to see me. You said you were going to pick up Margaret from her book club." The room felt like it was spinning. Margaret had been dead for 3 years. Her book club had been on Thursday evenings, and she'd stopped going 6 months before she died because the cancer treatments made her too tired. "I was probably just confused about the time," I said weakly. Dylan nodded sympathetically. "Of course, but Mr. Henderson, what if you had gotten in that car? What if something had happened to you or to someone else on the road?" I couldn't argue with that logic. The thought of hurting someone because of my own confusion was terrifying. The thing is, Dylan continued, Emily doesn't know about these incidents. I haven't told her because I didn't want to worry her unnecessarily, but I think it's time we had an honest conversation about getting you some support. He pulled out a brochure from his jacket pocket. I've been researching memory care facilities in the area. Not nursing homes, nice places where you'd have your independence, but also have people checking on you, helping with daily tasks when needed. The brochure was for Sunset Manor, a place about 30 minutes away. The photos showed smiling elderly people playing cards, tending gardens, participating in art classes. It looked pleasant enough, but the thought of leaving my home, Margaret's home, filled me with dread. I don't want Emily to see you struggling like this, Dylan said. She's been through so much already with losing her mother. If something happened to you because we didn't act, his voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. I would be putting my daughter through another devastating loss. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked. Just an evaluation, a professional assessment to see what level of care might be helpful. If the doctor says you're fine, then we'll all feel better. If there are areas where you need support, we'll figure it out together, as a family. That word again, family. I looked at Dylan sitting across from my kitchen table, his face earnest and concerned. The man who brought me coffee, who worried about my safety, who was trying to protect Emily from another heartbreak. But I couldn't shake the memory of those messages on the hidden phone. The questions about my worth, about when Emily would be away. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, Mr. Henderson. Take all the time you need. But please don't wait too long. Emily's planning another business trip next month, and I just want to make sure you're okay while she's gone. After Dylan left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at that brochure. Was I losing my mind? Were those videos real, or somehow doctored? And if they were real, did that mean Dylan was genuinely trying to help me? But there was something else bothering me, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Dylan had said Emily asked him to install security cameras. But in all our conversations about my well-being, Emily had never mentioned cameras. She'd never mentioned being that worried about me. I picked up the phone to call Emily, then hesitated. What if Dylan was right? What if I was forgetting conversations, repeating myself, acting confused? Calling Emily might just confirm his concern. Instead, I decided to do something that would either prove my sanity or reveal the extent of my confusion. I was going to start keeping a detailed journal of everything I did, everyone I talked to, every decision I made. If Dylan was right about my memory issues, the journal would show inconsistencies, gaps, confusion. But if Dylan was lying, well, then I'd have documentation of that too. Because despite all his concern and evidence, I still couldn't forget those messages about timing my schedule and calculating my worth. Was I losing my mind, or was someone trying to make me think I was? I started that journal the very next morning. Friday, October 13th. I wrote down everything, what time I woke up, what I ate for breakfast, every phone call, every visitor, every single detail of my day. By Sunday, I had 3 days of meticulous documentation, and what I discovered made my blood run cold. According to my journal, I had not called Emily 3 times on Wednesday asking about a doctor's appointment. In fact, I had only called her once that entire week, and it was to ask about her upcoming business trip. I had not stood in my garden having conversations with invisible people. I had not put groceries in and out of my refrigerator repeatedly. Most importantly, I had never tried to drive anywhere at 2 in the morning to pick up Margaret from book club. But Dylan had videos of all these things happening. On Monday morning, I decided to get professional confirmation of my mental state. I called Dr. Patricia Collins, my physician for the past 15 years, and made an appointment for that very afternoon. Robert, it's so good to see you, Dr. Collins said as I settled into the chair across from her desk. How have you been managing since Margaret passed? That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Pat. My son-in-law is concerned that I might be experiencing memory issues, possibly early dementia. He's documented some concerning behaviors. Dr. Collins frowned. What kind of behaviors? I described Dylan's videos, the garden conversations, the repetitive refrigerator actions, the late-night confusion about Margaret. Robert, when was your last cognitive assessment? She asked, pulling up my file on her computer. I don't recall ever having one. That's because you haven't. Your annual physicals have always included basic mental status checks, and you've never shown any signs of cognitive decline. She clicked through several screens. Your last appointment was 6 weeks ago. You were sharp as a tack, asking detailed questions about your blood pressure medication, discussing your exercise routine, planning your flu shot schedule. She leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. Tell me, Robert, have you experienced any memory lapses, confusion, or disorientation? Honestly, no. I feel exactly the same as I have for years. Maybe a little lonely since Margaret died, but mentally, I feel fine. Let's run a comprehensive cognitive assessment right now. Dr. Collins pulled out a tablet and opened what looked like a detailed questionnaire. This will take about 45 minutes, and it'll give us a clear picture of your mental state. For the next 3/4 of an hour, I answered questions, completed puzzles, recalled word lists, and performed various mental tasks. Some were easy, others challenging, but I felt confident throughout the entire process. Robert, Dr. Collins said as she reviewed the results, your cognitive function is not just normal for your age, it's above average. Your memory, problem-solving abilities, and mental processing speed are all excellent. Relief washed over me. So Dylan was wrong? About your mental state? Absolutely. But Robert, I'm concerned about something else. She turned her computer screen toward me. According to our records, someone called last month claiming to be you and canceled 3 upcoming appointments, your annual physical, your eye exam, and a consultation with Dr. Martinez about your shoulder pain. My heart started racing. I never canceled any appointments. I didn't think so. The voice on our recording system doesn't match your voice pattern from previous calls. She played a brief audio clip. The voice was similar to mine, but definitely not me. Someone has been impersonating you, Robert. Can you tell who it was? Not definitively, but our receptionist noted that the caller seemed unusually familiar with your medical history. They knew about your recent blood pressure medication change, your shoulder issues, even mentioned Margaret's passing in a way that suggested intimate knowledge of your situation. This was getting worse by the minute. Someone with detailed knowledge of my personal and medical information was making calls pretending to be me. There's something else, Dr. Collins continued. About 2 weeks ago, we received a call from someone claiming to be your son-in-law, asking about signs of dementia and what family members should watch for. He said you'd been showing concerning behaviors and wanted to know how to approach the subject with you. That would have been Dylan. But Pat, I haven't been showing any concerning behaviors. I suspected as much. The behaviors he described, repetitive actions, confused conversations, late-night disorientation, they're almost textbook symptoms. Too perfect, if you know what I mean. Real dementia rarely presents so obviously, especially in the early stages. Dr. Collins leaned forward, her expression serious. Robert, I think someone is trying to gaslight you. They're creating false evidence of mental decline while simultaneously canceling your medical appointments to prevent you from getting professional confirmation of your actual mental state. But why would Dylan do that? I can't speculate about motives, but I can tell you this. You are mentally sharp, your memory is excellent, and there is absolutely no medical evidence to support claims of cognitive decline. As I drove home from Dr. Collins' office, my mind was spinning. Dylan had somehow created videos showing me doing things I never did. He'd canceled my medical appointments to prevent me from discovering my clean bill of mental health. He'd called my doctor to plant seeds of concern about my cognitive state. But here's what really bothered me. Dylan had convinced me, at least partially, that these incidents had happened. When he showed me those videos, part of me had accepted them as real, had doubted my own memory and perception. That evening, I decided to test Dylan. I called Emily and asked her to meet me for coffee the next day. Of course, Dad. Is everything okay? Dylan mentioned he's been worried about you. That's what I want to talk to you about, sweetheart. Has Dylan discussed his concerns with you in detail? A little. He said you've been forgetting things, repeating conversations. He's been trying to handle it delicately because he doesn't want to worry me unnecessarily. Emily, I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you personally noticed any changes in my behavior or memory? There was a long pause. Dad, no. When we talk, you seem exactly the same as always. Sharp, funny, completely yourself. Dylan's been the one pointing out these issues, but I haven't witnessed them myself. And the security cameras Dylan installed around my house. What cameras? Dad, Dylan never mentioned anything about cameras to me. There it was. Dylan had been lying about Emily asking him to monitor me. He'd been operating entirely on his own, creating a narrative of my mental decline that he hadn't even shared with my daughter. But as I hung up the phone, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. If Dylan was going to all this trouble to make me appear mentally incompetent, there had to be a bigger plan at work, something that required me to seem unfit to manage my own affairs. And then I remembered those messages on the hidden phone, the ones about my worth, about timing Emily's absences. Dylan wasn't just trying to make me look crazy for his own amusement. He was building a case for something much more serious, something that would require proof of my incompetence. But what I discovered next would make me realize that Dylan might not be the mastermind I thought he was. Someone else was pulling the strings, and Dylan might be as much a victim as I was, because the next morning, I found something that changed everything I thought I knew about who I could trust. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing with an urgent text message from an unknown number. Check your daughter's credit report. Ask her about Atlantic City. Ask her about the loans. You don't know your family as well as you think you do. I stared at the message for a long time. Anonymous tips usually meant trouble, but after everything I'd discovered about Dylan's deception, I couldn't ignore it. I spent the morning researching how to check Emily's credit report. As her father, I didn't have legal access, but the message had mentioned Atlantic City specifically. That gave me something to work with. I called the hotel where Emily claimed to be on her current business trip, the Marriott in Chicago. When I asked to be connected to Emily Martinez's room, the desk clerk's response made my heart sink. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have any guests registered under that name. Are you sure about the hotel?" "She's there for a pharmaceutical conference," I insisted. "She checked in yesterday." "Sir, we don't have any pharmaceutical conferences scheduled this week. Would you like me to check other Marriott properties in the area?" I hung up without answering. Emily wasn't in Chicago. She'd lied to both Dylan and me about where she was going, but I had a sinking feeling I knew where she really was. I drove to Atlantic City that afternoon. It took me 3 hours, and with every mile, I hoped I was wrong. I hoped Emily was legitimately somewhere else, that the anonymous tip was just someone trying to cause trouble in our family. I wasn't wrong. I found Emily at the Borgata Casino, sitting at a high-stakes blackjack table. She was wearing the same business suit she'd worn when she kissed me goodbye 2 days earlier, telling me she was heading to an important conference in Chicago. But this wasn't the Emily I knew. This woman was tense, desperate. She was betting hundreds of dollars per hand, and from the stack of chips in front of her, she was losing badly. I watched from across the casino floor for 20 minutes before approaching. When I finally walked up to her table, the look of absolute terror on her face told me everything I needed to know. "Dad?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "The question is, what are you doing here, Emily? You're supposed to be at a pharmaceutical conference in Chicago." She quickly scooped up her remaining chips and excused herself from the table. We found a quiet corner near the bar where we could talk without being overheard. "Dad, I can explain," she began, but I held up my hand. "How long, Emily? How long have you been gambling?" Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "About 2 years. It started small, just occasional trips with friends from work, but then Mom got sick, and the stress, the medical bills, even with insurance. I thought I could win enough to help with the costs." "How much do you owe?" She couldn't look me in the eye. "It's complicated." "How much, Emily?" $200,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $200,000. That was more than most people made in 4 years. "To who?" I asked. "Different places. Some to the casinos, some to private lenders." "Private lenders? Loan sharks." My daughter was in debt to loan sharks for $200,000. "Emily, why didn't you come to me? You know I would have helped." "Dad, you're retired. You've got your savings, but not that kind of money. And I was so ashamed. I kept thinking I could turn it around, win it back." "Does Dylan know?" That's when she broke down completely. "Dad, Dylan's been trying to protect me. The people I owe money to, they've been threatening both of us. They want their money within the next 2 weeks. Or what? They said they'd hurt you. They know where you live, Dad. They know your routines. They told Dylan that if he could access your retirement savings, my debt would be forgiven and you'd be safe." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The messages on the hidden phone weren't Dylan planning to rob me. They were Dylan trying to save Emily's life, and mine. The videos Dylan showed me, the canceled doctor appointments. "Dylan's been desperate, Dad. He thought if he could get you declared mentally incompetent, he could access your accounts legally, as your guardian or something. He's been researching elder law, trying to find a way that wouldn't technically be stealing. But Emily, there had to be other options. We could have gone to the police, gotten protection. Dad, these aren't the kind of people you call the police about. They have connections, resources. They made it very clear that involving law enforcement would make things worse for everyone." I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything. My perfect son-in-law wasn't a gold-digging schemer. He was a desperate man trying to save his wife. My perfect daughter wasn't an innocent victim. She was a gambling addict who'd gotten in over her head with dangerous people. "There's something else," Emily said quietly. "The business trips I've been taking? Some of them were real, but others, I've been coming here, trying to win back enough to make payments. Dylan doesn't know about those trips. He thinks I'm getting better, going to meetings." "Are you? Getting better, I mean?" "I want to be. But Dad, when you're this deep in debt to these people, and they're calling every day with threats, it's hard to think about recovery when you're just trying to survive." "Show me the threats." Emily pulled out her phone and opened her text messages. What I saw made my stomach turn. Graphic descriptions of what would happen to her, to Dylan, and to me if the debt wasn't paid. Photos of our house, my daily walking route, even pictures of me grocery shopping. These people had been watching all of us. "Emily, we need to go to the FBI. This is extortion, harassment, stalking." "Dad, They told me what happens to people who involve federal agents. I won't risk your life. As we sat in that casino, surrounded by the sounds of slot machines and false hope, I realized that everything I thought I understood about my family was wrong. Dylan wasn't the villain. He was trying to be the hero in an impossible situation. Emily wasn't a victim of his schemes. She was the one whose actions had put us all in danger. But there was still something that didn't add up. If Dylan was just trying to save Emily and protect me, why all the elaborate deception? Why not just come to me with the truth from the beginning? Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. The people you owe money to, how did they get so much detailed information about our family, about my medical history, my routines, my financial situation? Emily's face went pale. What do you mean? Someone's been impersonating me, canceling my doctor appointments, making inquiries about my mental health. Someone with intimate knowledge of our family. Dad, I swear I never gave them personal information about you. Then how do they know so much? Emily stared at her phone for a long moment, scrolling through the threatening messages. Then she looked up at me with an expression of dawning horror. Dad, I think we're both being played. These messages, the threats, the detailed information about our lives. What if the people I owe money to aren't just loan sharks? What if there's something else entirely? That's when I realized that our family crisis was about to become something much bigger and more dangerous than any of us had imagined. Emily and I drove back from Atlantic City in tense silence. Both of us were lost in our own thoughts, trying to piece together how our family had gotten so deep into this nightmare. But as we pulled into my driveway, I knew I had to tell her the truth about something I'd been hiding for 3 years. Emily, before we figure out our next move, there's something I need to show you. Something about where my retirement money actually came from. She followed me into the house and down to my home office. I hadn't brought anyone down here since Margaret died. The room was exactly as I'd left it after my last day of work. Engineering blueprints scattered across the desk, prototype components in labeled boxes, and in the corner that massive safe that had started this whole mess. Dad, what is all this stuff? Emily asked, picking up one of the technical drawings. I thought you retired from Henderson Manufacturing 3 years ago. I did retire, sweetheart, but not exactly the way I told you. I opened the safe, but instead of reaching for the cash and documents Emily expected to see, I pulled out a metal briefcase. Inside were technical specifications, prototype circuit boards, and classified documentation stamped with government seals. Emily, for the last 15 years of my career, I wasn't just designing industrial machinery. I was working on defense contracts, specifically, advanced communication systems for military applications. She stared at the documents, confusion clear on her face. Dad, I don't understand. What does this have to do with anything? When I retired 3 years ago, it wasn't voluntary. The company discovered that I'd been keeping copies of proprietary technology that I'd developed, that I'd spent years perfecting, but that legally belonged to Henderson Manufacturing and the Department of Defense. Emily's eyes widened. Dad, are you saying you stole classified military technology? I prefer to think of it as keeping what was rightfully mine. I spent 40 years with that company, Emily. I gave them my best ideas, my innovations, my entire career. When they decided to force me out to make room for younger, cheaper engineers, I made sure I took my life's work with me. I pulled out another set of documents, licensing agreements, patent applications, and bank statements showing significant deposits over the past 3 years. This technology, Emily, it's worth millions. I've been quietly licensing modified versions to private contractors, international clients. That's where my retirement income really comes from. Emily sat down heavily in my desk chair. Dad, this is major federal crime territory. Industrial espionage, theft of classified materials, unlawful export of defense technology. I know what it is, sweetheart. I'm not proud of it, but after 40 years of loyalty, they were going to give me a gold watch and a pension that wouldn't cover your mother's medical bills. Is this why Mom was so stressed those last few years? Did she know? That question hit me harder than I expected. Your mother knew I'd taken some materials when I left the company. She thought it was just personal projects, retirement hobby stuff. She never knew about the classified nature of the technology or the licensing deals. Emily was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Then she looked up at me with a new understanding in her eyes. Dad, the people threatening me, what if they're not just loan sharks? What if they know about this? Before I could answer, we heard a car door slam outside. Through the office window, I could see Dylan getting out of his car, but he wasn't alone. There was another man with him, someone I'd never seen before. Emily, did you tell Dylan you were coming here? No, I told him I was still in Chicago. Dad, who is that man with him? I looked more closely at Dylan's companion. He was wearing a suit that was too perfect, too crisp. His posture was too straight. his awareness of his surroundings too acute. Everything about him screamed federal agent. Emily, I think we're about to find out just how deep this situation really goes. The doorbell rang, and I could hear Dylan's voice calling out. Mr. Henderson? Emily? I know you're both here. We need to talk. Emily and I looked at each other. There was no point in hiding now. We went upstairs and opened the front door. Dylan stood there with his companion, both of them wearing serious expressions. Mr. Henderson, this is Agent Marcus Thompson from the FBI, Dylan said, his voice strained. He has some things he needs to discuss with both of you. Agent Thompson stepped forward and showed us his credentials. Mr. Henderson, Miss Martinez, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what's really been happening to your family over the past few months. We all sat down in my living room, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mr. Henderson, Agent Thompson began, we've been aware of your unauthorized retention of classified materials from Henderson Manufacturing for quite some time. My heart sank. They knew. Of course they knew. However, he continued, that's not why I'm here today. Dylan, would you like to explain to your family how you've been helping us? Dylan looked like he was going to be sick. Emily, Dad, I'm so sorry. The gambling debts, the threats, none of it was real. What do you mean, none of it was real? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. The loan sharks, the threatening messages, even some of the gambling trips to Atlantic City, it was all orchestrated by the Bureau. They approached me 6 months ago and offered me a deal. Agent Thompson took over. We needed a way to create pressure on Mr. Henderson, to access his safe, to recover the classified materials without having to obtain warrants or go through official channels that might compromise ongoing investigations. I felt like the room was spinning. So Dylan's been working for you this whole time. Not exactly working for us, Agent Thompson corrected. Dylan was facing some genuine legal issues, tax evasion, some questionable business deals. We offered to make those problems disappear in exchange for his cooperation in recovering the classified materials. Emily turned to Dylan, her face a mixture of hurt and rage. So our marriage, our relationship, everything, it's all been a lie. No, Dylan said desperately. Emily, I love you. That part was never fake. But when the FBI approached me, when they told me what your father had done, when they said they could protect our future if I helped them, I thought I was doing the right thing. Agent Thompson pulled out a tablet and showed us surveillance footage. We've been monitoring Mr. Henderson's activities for the past 2 years. We know about the international clients, the licensing deals, the modified technology exports. The footage showed me meeting with various people in restaurants, coffee shops, hotel lobbies, people I thought were legitimate business contacts but who were probably foreign intelligence operatives. Mr. Henderson, Agent Thompson said, you've been selling modified versions of classified American military technology to at least 3 different foreign governments. That's treason. Treason. But here's the thing, Agent Thompson continued. We don't necessarily want to prosecute you. We want to turn this situation to our advantage. What do you mean? I asked. We want you to continue your activities, but now you'll be working for us. Your foreign contacts don't know we're aware of their true identities. You can help us feed them information we want them to have, while gathering intelligence on their operations. I looked at Dylan and Emily, both of whom were staring at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. And if I refuse? Agent Thompson's smile was cold. Mr. Henderson, you're 62 years old. Federal prison isn't kind to men your age, especially those convicted of treason. But if you cooperate, your family's problems disappear. Dylan's legal issues are resolved. Emily's gambling debts, the real ones, not the fake threats we created, those get taken care of too. That's when I realized that none of us had been playing the game we thought we were playing. We were all pawns in something much bigger, much more dangerous than family drama or financial problems. But Agent Thompson had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed that the technology in my safe was the most dangerous secret in this room. He had no idea what was really hidden down in my basement. Agent Thompson was still talking about cooperation and patriotic duty when my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down at it, expecting another anonymous tip. Instead, what I saw made my blood freeze. The message was from Margaret's phone number. Margaret, who had been dead for 3 years. Robert, look in the bottom drawer of my jewelry box. Now, don't let them see. Baitlin Apple. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This was impossible. Margaret's phone had been disconnected years ago. I'd personally canceled the service after her funeral. Mr. Henderson, are you listening to me? Agent Thompson's voice seemed to come from very far away. I'm sorry, I need to use the bathroom for a moment. This is all very overwhelming. I excused myself and went upstairs to the bedroom Margaret and I had shared for 37 years. Her jewelry box still sat on the dresser exactly where she'd left it. I'd never been able to bring myself to go through it after she died. With shaking hands, I opened the bottom drawer. Hidden beneath her grandmother's pearls was an envelope with my name written in Margaret's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 3 days before she died, along with a small digital device I didn't recognize. "My dearest Robert," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then the people I've been protecting you from have finally made their move. I'm so sorry for the lies, my love, but everything I did was to keep you safe." I had to sit down on the bed to continue reading. "I was never just a librarian, Robert. For the past 20 years of our marriage, I've been a federal agent working deep cover. My assignment was to monitor defense contractors for potential security breaches and technology theft. You were never my target, darling. You became my life." The room felt like it was spinning. "Margaret, my Margaret, had been an FBI agent? When I discovered your technology transfers 3 years ago, I faced an impossible choice. I could report you and watch the man I love go to prison for treason, or I could protect you. I chose to protect you, Robert. I chose you over my oath, over my country, over everything I'd believed in for 20 years. The letter continued, explaining how Margaret had been quietly sabotaging the FBI's investigation into my activities, feeding them false information, redirecting their attention to other cases. "My cancer isn't getting better, Robert, but my death will serve a purpose. When I'm gone, the Bureau will believe the investigation died with me. They'll assume I destroyed evidence to protect my cover, rather than to protect my husband." Tears were streaming down my face as I read the final paragraph. "The device in this envelope is a communication scrambler. If you're reading this letter, it means my plan failed and they've found another way to get to you. Use the device, Robert. It will show you who you can really trust. I love you, my darling. I'm sorry for everything. Your Margaret." I looked at the small device. It was about the size of a smartphone, with a single button and a small screen. When I pressed the button, the screen lit up with a scanning interface. I pointed it toward the floor, in the direction of my living room where Agent Thompson, Dylan, and Emily were waiting. Immediately, the device began detecting electronic signals. What it showed me changed everything. Agent Thompson was broadcasting our entire conversation to at least 3 different receivers. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that Dylan was also broadcasting Pinus to a completely different set of receivers. And Emily had 2 active recording devices on her. Everyone in my living room was wearing a wire. Everyone was working for someone else. I slipped the device into my pocket and went back downstairs, my mind racing. Margaret's letter had said the communication scrambler would show me who I could trust. The answer, apparently, was no one. "I'm sorry about that," I said, sitting back down. "Please continue, Agent Thompson." But now I was listening differently. Now I was paying attention not just to what Agent Thompson was saying, but to how he was saying it. He was performing for his audience, whoever was listening to his transmission. As I was explaining, "Mr. Henderson, your cooperation could be very valuable to national security. The foreign contacts you've developed believe they're buying stolen American technology. We can use those relationships." Dylan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mr. Henderson, I know this is a lot to process, but Agent Thompson is offering us a way out of this situation that protects everyone." I noticed Dylan's emphasis on certain words, as if he was sending coded messages to whoever was listening to his wire. "Dad," Emily said, reaching over to squeeze my hand, "maybe we should consider their offer. I mean, what choice do we really have?" As Emily spoke, I felt something small and hard pressed against my palm. She was passing me something while maintaining eye contact with Agent Thompson. I palmed the object without looking at it. "You know what?" I said, standing up. "I think I need some time to think about this. This is a lot to absorb in one day." Agent Thompson's expression hardened slightly. "Mr. Henderson, I'm afraid time isn't a luxury we have. We need your decision today." "Why the rush?" I asked. "Because tomorrow morning, a federal task force is going to execute search warrants on your property, your safety deposit boxes, and any other locations where you might have stored classified materials. Your only chance to avoid prosecution is to cooperate with us right now." That's when I realized Agent Thompson had just made a critical mistake. He'd revealed information that a legitimate FBI agent would never share with a suspect. No federal agent tells their target about upcoming raids. I opened my hand slightly and looked at the object Emily had passed me. It was a small note written in her handwriting. "He's not FBI. Check his badge number. Real agents would have backup." Emily was right. A real federal operation would involve multiple agents, surveillance teams, backup units. Agent Thompson had shown up alone with Dylan, which made no sense for an operation this sensitive. But if Thompson wasn't FBI, who was he? And why was Dylan working with him? I excused myself again, this time to get everyone drinks from the kitchen. While I was alone, I pulled out Margaret's communication device again and did a deeper scan of the signals in my house. What I discovered made my knees weak. Thompson's transmission was going to a location I recognized, the Chinese consulate building downtown. Dylan's signal was being sent to what appeared to be a Russian intelligence facility, and Emily's devices were broadcasting to an address I couldn't identify, but which was definitely not an American government building. My living room wasn't hosting a federal operation, it was hosting an international intelligence summit, and I was the prize they were all fighting over. But none of them knew about Margaret's real identity, or the fact that my supposedly dead wife had been protecting me from exactly this kind of situation for years. As I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by foreign agents pretending to be my family and law enforcement, I realized that Margaret's death might not have been from cancer at all. And if my wife had faked her death to protect me, then maybe it was time for me to return the favor. Because the technology in my safe wasn't the most dangerous thing in my house. The most dangerous thing was the woman who was supposed to be buried in Riverside Cemetery, but who I was starting to suspect might still be very much alive. I brought drinks back to the living room, my mind reeling from what Margaret's communication device had revealed. As I handed Agent Thompson his coffee, I made a decision that would either save my family or destroy us all. You know what, Agent Thompson? I think you're right. I should cooperate with the Bureau. I sat back down, watching his reaction carefully. But first, I'd like to verify your credentials with your field office. Thompson's smile faltered for just a moment. Mr. Henderson, I understand your caution, but we're operating under a classified directive. Standard verification procedures don't apply. Of course they don't, I said, pulling out my phone. Dylan, Emily, I think there's something you both need to know about your mother. About Margaret. Emily looked confused. Dad, what does Mom have to do with any of this? I opened Margaret's letter and began reading aloud. My dearest Robert, if you're reading this, then the people I've been protecting you from have finally made their move. Thompson started to stand up. Mr. Henderson, I don't think now is the time for family. Sit down, I said firmly. She continues, I was never just a librarian, Robert. For the past 20 years of our marriage, I've been a federal agent working deep cover. The color drained from Emily's face. Dad, that's impossible. Mom worked at the public library. She organized book clubs and literacy programs. That's what I thought too, sweetheart. But apparently those business trips she took for library conferences, those were actually intelligence operations. I continued reading. When I discovered your technology transfers 3 years ago, I faced an impossible choice. I could report you and watch the man I love go to prison for treason, or I could protect you. Thompson was now visibly agitated. Miss Henderson, this is clearly some kind of fabrication. Grief can make people create elaborate fantasy letters from their dead wives? I interrupted. With information that perfectly explains how 3 different intelligence agencies ended up in my living room today, I pulled out Margaret's communication device and held it up. This little gadget your wife left me has been very enlightening, Agent Thompson. Or should I say, whoever you really are. Dylan finally spoke up. Mr. Henderson, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that Agent Thompson here is broadcasting our conversation to the Chinese consulate. You, Dylan, are transmitting to what appears to be a Russian intelligence facility. And Emily, sweetheart, you're wearing 2 different recording devices that are sending signals to locations I can't even identify. Emily's hand flew to her chest. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. The small device you passed me earlier? It had a tiny transmitter attached to it. Very clever, but Margaret's scanner picked it up. Agent Thompson was now standing, his hand moving toward what I assumed was a concealed weapon. Mr. Henderson, you're clearly having some kind of mental episode. Am I? Because according to my wife's letter, she spent 3 years sabotaging FBI investigations to protect me. She fed false information to her handlers, redirected attention to other cases, even faked evidence to throw them off my trail. I walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo of Margaret from our wedding day. But here's the part that really got my attention. Margaret wrote that her cancer wasn't getting better, but she never said she was dying from cancer. Emily was crying now. Dad, please stop. Mom died from cancer. We were all there. Were we, Emily? Or were we at a very elaborate funeral for someone who needed to disappear? That's when I heard it, the sound of a car door closing outside. Not just one car, but several. Through the window I could see black SUVs surrounding my house. Thompson smiled grimly. It doesn't matter what you think you've figured out, Mr. Henderson. You're out of time. But as the SUVs disgorged their occupants, I noticed something strange. They weren't moving like a coordinated team. There were 3 distinct groups, and they were positioning themselves as much to watch each other as to watch my house. Looks like all your respective agencies decided to crash the party, I said. That's when the front door opened without anyone knocking. A woman walked in, moving with the kind of confidence that suggested she owned the place. She was wearing a dark coat, her graying hair pulled back, and her eyes were the same green eyes I'd been looking into for 37 years. "Hello, Robert," Margaret said calmly. "I think it's time we cleared up a few misunderstandings." Emily screamed. Dylan dropped his coffee cup. Agent Thompson reached for his weapon. Margaret held up her hand, and everyone in the room froze. "Before anyone does something stupid, you should know that this house has been under surveillance by at least 4 different intelligence agencies for the past 6 hours. Any violence here will be recorded by all parties, which would be very inconvenient for everyone involved." She walked over to me and kissed my cheek, as casually as if she'd just come home from grocery shopping. "Hello, darling. I'm sorry about the dramatic entrance, but circumstances required it." "Margaret," I whispered, "you're supposed to be dead." "Yes, well, death has been very restful. Gave me time to clean up some loose ends." She turned to face the others. "Now, let's address our uninvited guests, shall we?" She pointed at Thompson. "You're not FBI. You're Ministry of State Security, Chinese intelligence. Your real name is Liu Chen, and you've been operating under diplomatic cover for 3 years." Thompson's composure finally cracked. "That's impossible. My credentials are excellent forgeries, but I helped create the authentication protocols you're trying to mimic. They don't work on someone who wrote the manual." She turned to Dylan. "And you, young man, are in much deeper trouble than you realize. The Russians who recruited you think you're motivated by money. What they don't know is that Emily isn't actually my biological daughter." "What?" Emily and I said simultaneously. "Emily is the daughter of a Russian intelligence officer who was killed in Prague 15 years ago. We've been protecting her identity ever since." Margaret's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing the weather, the gambling addiction, the debts, even meeting Dylan, all orchestrated to activate her as an asset when the time was right. Emily collapsed back into her chair. "That's not possible. I remember my childhood. I remember growing up here with you and Dad. You remember what we helped you remember, sweetheart. The mind is remarkably adaptable, especially in young people who've experienced trauma." Margaret walked over to the window and looked out at the various surveillance teams. "The problem is, everyone out there thinks they're running their own operation. The Chinese think they're stealing American military technology. The Russians think they're activating a sleeper agent. The actual FBI thinks they're recovering classified materials from a retired engineer." She turned back to us with a smile that was both loving and terrifying. "What none of them realize is that I've been running all of them for the past 3 years. Every piece of information they think they've discovered, every breakthrough they think they've achieved, every relationship they think they've cultivated, it all came from me." "Margaret," I said slowly, "what exactly have you been doing?" "Protecting our family, Robert, and preparing for the day when we'd all have to disappear together." She walked over to the safe and input a code I'd never seen before. The safe opened, but instead of the technology and cash I expected, it was completely empty except for 4 passports and a single piece of paper. "Because, my darlings, we're not staying for the rest of this performance. We have a plane to catch." Margaret handed me one of the passports from the safe. The name read Michael Richardson, but the photo was unmistakably me, just with different hair and glasses. "Margaret, I need you to explain what's happening here," I said, my voice shaking. 3 years. You let me grieve for 3 years. I know, darling, and I'm sorry, but your grief had to be real for the deception to work." She turned to Emily, who was staring at her in shock. "Emily, sweetheart, I know this is overwhelming, but everything your father and I did was to protect you." Emily finally found her voice. "You're telling me my entire life is a lie. My childhood, my memories, even my identity. Your memories are real, Emily. We never altered what happened after you came to live with us when you were 12. We just edited what came before." Agent Thompson, or Liu Chen, was speaking rapidly into a concealed microphone. Margaret walked over and plucked a small device from his collar. "Gentlemen, your backup isn't coming," she announced to the room, "because I've been jamming all communications from this house for the past 20 minutes. Your respective agencies think you're all still conducting normal surveillance operations." She crushed the device under her heel. "Dylan, darling, I know you're confused, but I need you to listen carefully. The people who recruited you told you they were Russian intelligence, correct?" Dylan nodded mutely. "They lied. They're actually CIA running a false flag operation to identify Russian assets in American defense industries. You've been helping your own government spy on foreign intelligence services." "That's impossible," Dylan stammered. "Is it? Think about it. How did they approach you initially? A chance encounter at a coffee shop, a mutual friend introduction, and then they slowly revealed their true nature as foreign agents, made you feel like you were making a patriotic sacrifice by feeding them information." Dylan's face went pale. "The woman at Starbucks. She said she was impressed by my marketing expertise. Classic CIA recruitment technique. They've been using you to feed controlled information to actual Russian operatives who think they're running you as their asset." Margaret walked over to the window again. Outside, the various surveillance teams were starting to move closer to the house. And Emily, your gambling addiction wasn't random either. The people who encouraged it, who introduced you to high-stakes games, who connected you with those particular lenders, they were all working for me. Working for you. Emily's voice cracked. I needed to create a situation that would bring all the interested parties together in one place at one time. Your fake debts, Dylan's fake recruitment, Robert's real technology transfers, Thompson's fake FBI operation, it's all been leading to this moment. Thompson pulled out a gun. Enough of this. Mrs. Henderson, you're coming with me. Margaret smiled. Mr. Liu, do you really want to start a shooting war between Chinese intelligence, Russian intelligence, and the CIA in a suburban living room? Because that's what will happen if you fire that weapon. As if to prove her point, red laser dots suddenly appeared on every window of the house, sniper sights from multiple directions. Everyone outside knows everyone else is here, Margaret continued calmly. The moment shots are fired, this becomes an international incident. Is stolen American technology really worth starting World War III? Thompson slowly lowered his weapon. That's better. Now let me explain what's really been happening. Margaret walked back to the center of the room. Robert, when you started selling modified versions of your technology, you thought you were dealing with private contractors and foreign businesses. I said. You were dealing with intelligence services from 6 different countries, all of whom believed they were getting exclusive access to American military secrets. What they were actually getting was carefully modified technology that I designed specifically for each client. She pulled a tablet from her coat and showed us a complex diagram. The Chinese version has built-in vulnerabilities that allow us to monitor their military communications. The Russian version includes tracking software that reports their submarine positions. The Israeli version, the Pakistani version, the North Korean version, all of them have unique backdoors. You turned my technology into Trojan horses. I realized. I turned your technology into the most successful intelligence operation in American history. For 3 years, we've been monitoring the military capabilities and strategic planning of every major adversary. Emily stood up abruptly. So everything, my marriage, my gambling, my relationship with Dad, it's all been part of some elaborate spy operation? No, sweetheart. Your marriage to Dylan is real. Your love for your father is real. The family we built together is real. Margaret's voice softened. I just had to use those real relationships to create the framework for something bigger. Dylan finally spoke up. Mrs. Henderson, what happens now? If all these intelligence agencies know about each other, they don't know about each other, Dylan. That's the beauty of it. Thompson thinks he's here to steal technology from Robert. The CIA team outside thinks they're monitoring Thompson. The actual FBI unit thinks they're investigating Robert's technology transfers. The Russian surveillance team thinks they're protecting their asset. You. She paused, letting that sink in. What they don't know is that I've been coordinating all their operations through intermediaries. Every piece of intelligence they think they've independently discovered came from me. Every strategic advantage they think they've gained has been carefully orchestrated. But why reveal yourself now? I asked. Why end the operation? Margaret's expression grew serious. Because someone figured it out. Someone with access to intelligence databases from multiple countries started connecting the dots. They realized that all these separate operations were actually part of a single, coordinated effort. Who? That's the problem. I don't know. But whoever it is has been systematically eliminating key players in the operation. 3 assets in different countries have died in the past month, all made to look like accidents. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Someone's cleaning house. Someone's cleaning house, and we're next on the list. That's why I had to surface. That's why we need to disappear. Tonight. As if on cue, a new sound emerged from outside. Helicopters approaching from multiple directions. Margaret checked her watch. Right on schedule. Those aren't any of the agencies already here. Those belong to whoever's been killing our assets. She grabbed Emily's hand and started moving toward the back of the house. Time to go, everyone. The family vacation starts now. Margaret, wait, I called after her. What about all those people outside? What about the operations? The intelligence you've been gathering? She turned back to me with a sad smile. Robert, some games end when you win. Others end when you realize the only way to survive is to stop playing. The helicopter rotors were getting louder, and through the windows I could see the surveillance team scrambling for cover. Who's coming for us? Emily asked. Margaret opened the back door, revealing a path through the woods I'd never noticed before. The people who taught me everything I know about intelligence operations. The people I've been working for all along. And who is that? The same people who've been watching our family for 15 years, waiting for the right moment to activate the most important intelligence asset they've ever created. She looked directly at Emily. You, sweetheart. They've been waiting for you. We ran through the woods behind my house, following a path that Margaret navigated with surprising familiarity. The helicopter sounds were getting closer, and I could hear shouting from the direction of my house. Margaret, stop, I called out, breathing heavily. I need to understand what's happening before we go any further. She paused at a clearing where an SUV was waiting with its engine running. Robert, we don't have time for a full briefing. Make time, I said firmly. You just told us that Emily is some kind of intelligence asset, that our entire family has been part of an operation for 15 years. I'm not taking another step until you explain. Margaret looked at Emily, then at Dylan, then back at me. You're right, you all deserve the truth. She opened the SUV door, but didn't get in. The Henderson family has been in the intelligence business for 3 generations, Robert. Your father wasn't just a mechanical engineer during World War II. He was part of the team that developed encrypted communication systems for the OSS. That's impossible. Dad worked for General Electric. General Electric was his cover, just like Henderson Manufacturing was yours. The technology you thought you were stealing? You were supposed to take it. It was designed specifically for you to steal and modify. Emily sat down heavily on a fallen log. Are you telling us that Grandpa was a spy too? Not a spy, sweetheart. A developer. The Henderson family has always specialized in creating technology that appears valuable to foreign intelligence services, but actually serves American interests. Margaret pulled out a tablet and showed us what looked like a family tree. Your father created communication devices that allowed the Allies to intercept German transmissions. Robert improved on that technology for modern applications. And Emily, she paused, looking at my daughter with something that might have been pride or regret. Emily, your real father wasn't Russian. He was American intelligence, working deep cover in Prague. When he was killed, we brought you home not just to protect you, but because you inherited his gift for languages and pattern recognition. What gift? Emily asked. You speak 7 languages fluently, Emily. Most people don't acquire that many languages naturally, unless they have a specific neurological advantage. You can identify patterns in code, communication habits, behavioral tells that most trained analysts miss. Dylan was shaking his head. This is insane. Emily works in pharmaceutical sales. Emily works in pharmaceutical sales as her cover identity, Margaret corrected. Her real job involves analyzing communication patterns between international drug cartels and their money laundering operations. Every business trip she takes is actually an intelligence gathering mission. That's not true, Emily said, but her voice lacked conviction. Emily, think about your business trips. How many times have you been asked to attend conferences in cities where major drug enforcement operations happened within weeks of your visit? How many of your pharmaceutical contacts have been arrested for money laundering in the past 2 years? Emily's face went pale. 7. 7 of my contacts have been arrested. Because you identified their communication patterns and financial networks. The information you gathered during those fake pharmaceutical meetings was used to build cases against international drug trafficking organizations. Margaret started walking toward the SUV again. The gambling addiction was created to give you a reason to travel frequently without suspicion. Dylan's recruitment was orchestrated to provide you with a partner who could handle the technical aspects of your missions. Wait, Dylan said. My recruitment by the Russians, or the CIA, or whoever they actually were, that was all planned. Dylan, your background in marketing made you perfect for creating legitimate-looking business fronts for intelligence operations. The people who recruited you weren't just using you to spy on other agencies. They were training you to help Emily maintain her cover identity. I was trying to process all of this. Margaret, if all of this is true, if our family has been in intelligence for 3 generations, then why the elaborate deception? Why make me think I was stealing technology and selling it illegally? Margaret's expression grew sad. Because the operation needed to be authentic enough to convince foreign intelligence services that it was real. If you had known you were working for the government, your behavior would have been different. Your stress, your guilt, your paranoia, all of that was necessary to sell the illusion. The helicopter sounds were getting very close now. Margaret opened the SUV door urgently. There's more, but we need to move. The people coming for us aren't foreign intelligence or rival agencies. They're Americans who discovered the operation and decided they wanted to profit from it privately. What do you mean? I asked, climbing into the vehicle. A group of intelligence officers went rogue. They've been selling information about our operations to the highest bidders, then eliminating the assets to cover their tracks. They've killed operatives in 6 countries, and they're planning to auction off everything they know about our technology networks. Emily got in beside me, still looking stunned. So we're running from our own people? We're running from people who were our own people, Margaret corrected, starting the engine. Now they're just criminals with security clearances. Dylan climbed into the front passenger seat. Where are we going? To meet the one person who knows more about this operation than I do, Margaret said, pulling away from the clearing. Who? Margaret smiled grimly as we drove deeper into the woods. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, the sweet elderly lady who brings us homemade cookies every Christmas and always asks about your work, Robert. Mrs. Chen is part of this? Mrs. Chen is the most dangerous intelligence operative in the Western Hemisphere, Margaret said, and she's been running this entire operation from the house next door for the past 12 years. Margaret drove us through winding back roads I'd never seen before, even though I'd lived in this area for 40 years. We ended up at what looked like an abandoned warehouse about 10 miles from my house. This doesn't look like Mrs. Chen's place, Dylan observed. Mrs. Chen doesn't live next door to you, Robert, Margaret explained as she parked. She never did. The woman you think is Mrs. Chen is actually Agent Sarah Kim, one of the most experienced deep-cover operatives in American intelligence. We got out of the SUV and walked toward the warehouse. Margaret knocked on what appeared to be a solid metal door, in a specific pattern, 3 short, 2 long, 3 short again. The door opened, and there stood Mrs. Chen, except she wasn't the frail elderly woman who had been bringing us cookies for 12 years. This Mrs. Chen was standing straight, moving with fluid precision, and holding a very professional-looking pistol. Hello, Margaret, she said in perfect unaccented English. Right on time. Hello, Sarah. Are we secure here? As secure as anywhere can be when half the intelligence community is hunting us. She gestured for us to come inside. The warehouse looked abandoned from the outside, but inside it was a high-tech operations center. Banks of computers, satellite communication equipment, and wall-mounted screens showing what appeared to be surveillance footage from around the world. Robert, Emily, Dylan, welcome to the real family business, Mrs. Chen said, holstering her weapon. I'm sorry about the deception, but it was necessary. I was still trying to process seeing my sweet elderly neighbor transformed into what was clearly a very dangerous operative. Mrs. Chen, I don't understand. You've been living next door to us for 12 years. You knew Margaret. You came to her funeral. I organized Margaret's funeral, Robert. The fake death, the burial, the whole elaborate production. It was the only way to get her out of an operation that was becoming too dangerous. Emily sat down heavily in one of the office chairs. So Mom's been alive this whole time, and you knew? Emily, your mother spent 3 years in deep cover, allowing everyone to believe she was dead while she worked to protect all of you from the rogue agents who had infiltrated the operation. Margaret walked over to one of the computer terminals and pulled up a series of files. Show them the list, Sarah, Mrs. Chen typed rapidly, and names began appearing on the main screen. These are intelligence assets who've been killed in the past 6 months. All of them were part of operations similar to ours. All of their deaths were made to look like accidents or natural causes. I counted 17 names. Someone's been systematically eliminating people. Not someone. A group of former intelligence officers who decided that patriotic service didn't pay well enough, Mrs. Chen explained. They've been identifying successful operations, stealing the intelligence, selling it to foreign governments, then killing everyone who knew about the original operations. Dylan was studying the names on the screen. How do you know they're coming for us? Mrs. Chen pulled up another screen showing financial transactions. Because they've already been paid. $3 million from Chinese intelligence for Robert's technology networks. $2 million from Russian sources for information about Emily's drug cartel investigations. $5 million from a private military contractor for the complete list of assets in the Henderson family operation. $10 million, I said quietly. Our lives are worth $10 million to them. Actually, Robert, your deaths are worth $10 million. As long as you're alive, you could expose their operation or create new intelligence networks. Dead, you're just a closed file. Margaret turned away from the computer. That's why we had to stage this elaborate reveal today. We needed to flesh out all the interested parties, create confusion, and give us time to disappear. Disappear to where? Emily asked. Mrs. Chen smiled. That's where things get interesting. You see, the rogue agents made one crucial mistake. They assumed that the Henderson family operation was limited to Robert's technology and Emily's drug investigations. She walked over to a wall safe and entered a long combination. What they don't know is that this operation has been much bigger than they realized. The safe opened, revealing stacks of documents, multiple passports, and several hard drives. For the past 5 years, we've been documenting every illegal intelligence transaction, every rogue operation, every corrupt official who's been selling American secrets. We have enough evidence to bring down the entire network. Margaret picked up one of the hard drives. The intelligence they think they're buying from us? It's all fabricated, modified, useless. But the intelligence we have about them is completely real. So what happens now? Dylan asked. Mrs. Chen began packing the documents into travel bags. Now you all get new identities and disappear until we can turn this evidence over to the right people in Washington, the legitimate people who can clean up this mess. How long will that take? I asked. Could be months, could be years. Depends on how deep this corruption goes. Emily stood up. And we just abandoned our entire lives? Our house, our jobs, everything? Emily, your house is probably a smoking crater by now, Margaret said gently. The rogue agents aren't subtle. When they realize we've escaped, they'll destroy everything connected to the operation. As if to emphasize her point, Mrs. Chen's communication equipment began beeping urgently. She checked the screen and frowned. We need to go, now. The rogue team just arrived at the warehouse location they thought we'd be at. They're 20 minutes behind us, but they're moving fast. We grabbed the bags and headed back to the SUV. As we drove away, I could see smoke rising in the direction of my neighborhood. Margaret, what about the glitter trap I set up in my safe? Was that part of the plan too? She laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in years. No, Robert, that was all you. And it was brilliant. The rogue agents triggered it when they broke into your house tonight. There are photos and videos of wanted fugitives covered in glitter being transmitted to every law enforcement agency in the country. Sometimes the best revenge is just living happily ever after, I said. Sometimes, Robert, the best revenge is making your enemies famous for all the wrong reasons. As we drove toward our new lives, I realized that despite all the deception, all the danger, all the lies, we were still a family. A very unusual family, but a family nonetheless. And we were finally free.